Right, okay then, ladies and gents. Now we're now standing on Tower Green, and Tower Green is our village green. But there's only one difference between this village green and any other village green. Without one, we've got a private execution site, now represented by the glass memorial behind me here. Now, before I talk about probably the most famous execution that took place here on Tower Green, I just want to take a few more minutes longer to point out some of the more important buildings that surround us. Over on my right hand side here, ladies and gentlemen, tucked away in the corner, we've got a large, perfectly preserved black and white Tudor building. Now that is the only Tudor building left standing in the City of London, because the rest were all destroyed by the Great Fire in 1666. It is known as the Queen's House. It's called the Queen's House because, believe it or not, it belongs to the Queen. Built on the orders of King Henry VIII as a wedding present for Anne Boleyn. Sadly though, Anne never got to live there, because by the time that building was finished, so was she. It was then handed over to the officers of the Tower, and since that time we've used it to house really important prisoners. Now, Queen Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife, she was a prisoner inside that building prior to her execution. Other important prisoners have included William Penn, founder of the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. And more recently, in 1941, it was also the prison to Rudolf Hess, the deputy leader of Nazi Germany. Today though, ladies and gentlemen, the Queen's House has been handed over to our resident constable, who at present is General Sir Nicholas Horton, and he is allowed to use the Queen's House throughout his 5-year period in charge of the Tower. Now, either side of the Queen's House, you've got other buildings that have blue doors, and these are also homes to my fellow Yeoman Warder colleagues and Beefeaters who live here at the Tower with our families. Having said that though, two houses behind me here, ladies and gentlemen. The first one there with the blue lamp above it is the home to our doctor. The one next door, the home to our chaplain. On the left hand side here, the chaplain's office, the Chapel Royal of St Peter ad Vincula. That chapel, ladies and gentlemen, was built in the year 1519 in the reign of King Henry VIII. Well, the architecture you see there is all pure typical Tudor architecture. Sadly though, during the 17th and 18th century, the chapel suffered greatly from many alterations and additions, until it became so bad we had to ask Queen Victoria to come and take a look at the place. Now, the flagstones that line the floor inside the church, they were so uneven at the time when Queen Victoria came to pay us a visit, that as she made her way along the aisle, she actually tripped and fell. And as the saying goes, she was not amused. She immediately set up a royal commission to restore the chapel back to its original Tudor design. One of the tasks of that Royal Commission was to exhume all the bodies that lay buried beneath the floor. They were given the task of trying to identify those bodies where possible for reburial in a mass grave down inside the crypt. However, all the bodies that were exhumed from underneath the altar table inside the church, they were exhumed, correctly identified and laid to rest back in their original graves. Now, underneath the altar table inside the church, ladies and gentlemen, is the final resting place of Queen Anne Boleyn, Queen Catherine Howard, Lady Jane Grey and James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth. You remember that story I told you back at the Bell Tower about the Duke of Monmouth? You'll realise he's one of the few executed people buried in there, complete with his head. Now, all in all, 1,500 bodies were removed from below the floor, but only 33 could be correctly identified. Their names are now all commemorated on a brass plaque situated inside the church. Now, once the service is over, ladies and gentlemen, the church will be open, so you'll be able to go in and have a look for yourself. Now, behind you there, ladies and gentlemen, big long building with a clock at the centre and soldiers standing guard outside. Now, that building, ladies and gentlemen, is known as the Waterloo Barracks. Now, the Waterloo Barracks is a relative newcomer to the Tower of London, having only been built in the year 1845, originally as a barrack block for the soldiers that garrisoned here at the Tower, and named after the Duke of Wellington's victory at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. All those cannons that you see standing guard outside are all captured French cannons taken from the field of Waterloo. Today though, the Waterloo Barracks has been converted. It's now the